This one, we're going to switch our focus a little bit. Which teams make the most sense for Baker Mayfield? This is Pro Football Focus. And they list Seattle, Carolina, and Houston as 1, 2, and 3. And then they give you the caveat that if he's cut, he becomes a backup option everywhere. And we go from that to Pete Carroll also saying, I don't see us making a trade for anybody at all at quarterback, being the Seahawks. Which, okay, if you want Drew Lock, I'm okay with that. Scott, what do you think? My gut feeling has been for a little bit. I think it ends up being somebody that gets that has a quarterback injury that nobody's really thinking about. I think Andrew Berry waits it out for that long.
Yeah, that's interesting. It's going to be a test of will if he decides to wait that long because, quarterbacks usually don't get hurt until the game starts. So you're going to be waiting an awful long time. You're going to be paying part of Baker's salary as it is. You got to use a roster spot on him. So I don't know. I would still bet against that, Dave. I would bet that he's traded before, or there's a move made, preferably a trade, right, before training camp. But I see where you're going with it, and I think Andrew Berry does. I think part of him says, let's just wait until there's a reason to trade him and we get a decent offer. I wouldn't rule out Seattle. I know what Pete Carroll said, but I think people are posturing. I still would not rule out Carolina, despite, drafting Matt Corral. If the Browns were willing to take whatever percentage of salary that is, I think that would make at least a couple of teams really consider Baker Mayfield. And so maybe the Browns just feel like, hey, when we decide to do that, bite that bullet, we're going to have options. Until then, we're going to hold out and see if any team wants him for full price or mostly full price. And I can see the thinking there. I would say just get the situation resolved. But Andrew Berry doesn't seem to have the same sense of urgency.
Do you get the sense that if, in fact, he came back, my sense is I don't think he can afford personally to become a distraction. He basically has to be on his best behavior if he comes back and is in camp or any of that.
Yeah, I would lean toward that because I get the reality of it. He's trying to look good for future employers. I understand that. I also think I know Baker to a certain degree in his personality, and I think it'd be hard for him to not create some kind of distraction or controversy. I mean, if he opens his mouth to any reporter, I just don't think he's going to bite his tongue. So it would be interesting to see how he handles that. I don't think he wants that situation at all. I think he wants this resolved. And I think the Browns do too, maybe to a lesser degree, and maybe that they feel like that's the only leverage they have. And maybe by waiting, they can get Baker to agree to take a pay cut, which would help him get traded. But yeah, it would be interesting. It would be a really interesting dynamic, Dave, to see that happen. And then especially if you got word about a Watson suspension and would the Browns actually proceed as if they could start Baker for a few games. I mean, it's really hard for me to kind of fathom that, but I guess I can't eliminate it from the list of scenarios to consider.
Yeah, I get where you're going with Baker's personality. You'd almost have to make him, he's not going to be available to the media just to avoid it.